Hey, welcome back to the Sheetkeeper. Today we're going to talk about discretionary spending. So things like food, gas, and entertainment, and how to plan for that in the future. We're going to talk about understanding how to come up with a number that makes sense on a biweekly basis for you to plan, some tools that we can use to get that number accurate, and then some things we can do, literally behaviors that help us stay within that number and achieve our plan. And if you've been following along with us, that number ends up in just one line of our spreadsheet, and I'm talking about this line right here. That's the discretionary food, gas, and entertainment line. I want to get into detail with you about that today because it can make or break this entire planning process, and it's so important to what we're doing here with our planning. If you're new here, welcome, and if you've been around, welcome back. You can call me E, and on the Sheetkeeper channel here on YouTube or thesheetkeeper.com, we've been building a free spreadsheet in Google Sheets to model out your entire financial future longitudinally with an at-a-glance view so you can quickly make smart financial decisions, see how they'll impact your future, and you can do things like pay off debt, save money, or plan for things like big purchases or maybe even retirement. Now, I always recommend, if you're just joining us, that you build your spreadsheet from the very start. So I'm going to put a link right here that lets you access the Essential 6 playlist. It shows you from the very beginning, blank spreadsheet, how to build this and how to get up to speed with us. And if you want to go faster and start right here, I'm also going to leave a link to the downloads of all the spreadsheets from all the episodes so you can access those and you can bring up the one that we're using today and follow right along. You can also use those to double check your formulas as you build. Now, I'm wearing a beekeeper hat. I am not a beekeeper. I'm just a guy that does spreadsheets. Check out the other episodes to learn more about that. And just a quick disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only and isn't financial advice. Everyone's situation's different, so always verify your own numbers or talk to a qualified financial professional before you make big decisions. We've done a lot of building, but today I just want to talk about this one line specifically. Why is this line combined as food, gas, and entertainment? Well, first, let's take a look at all the expenses in this spreadsheet. If you look at every expense line that we have here, that's line 4 all the way through 19 currently. Now in your spreadsheet, they may look a little different if you added some rows. And let me give you a new term to use to describe those expenses. They need to be what we call MISI, or mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, meaning the expenses that go into each line never also go into another line. They're mutually exclusive. If you put something in the rent line, that money doesn't go anywhere else. Collectively exhaustive means if you look at all the expenses that we have in all the rows here, all that adds up to all the money that we're going to spend in a given pay period. Mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. So at the top, we have all of our fixed recurring expenses. Those are things that are pretty hard to change on a monthly basis. Things like rent, our car payment, our insurance, mostly utilities. Now I get you can save a little bit of electricity by turning the lights off, but it's really going to be what it is. Or I'll say it's just harder to control that in a material way.
What are you trying to do? Heat the whole hive?
The things that are pretty easy to control are things like how much we put away in savings. And the easiest one for us to really control on a biweekly basis is right here in line 17, food, gas, and entertainment. That's kind of our catch-all for all of our expenses that don't go into the fixed regular expense lines. So I want to talk about why we group those together in this method. What I like to put here are expenses that I would consider to be squishy, for lack of a better term. Things that you can squish down if you need to so that you can make it to that goal. So in this spreadsheet, you can see in F17, that's $205. What you're saying by putting 205 in F17 is in that pay period, starting November 14th, through that next 2 weeks, you're going to spend $205 combined on those things, on all of your discretionary items. Now you can do this any way that you want to. Say you've got a Netflix bill and it's, I don't know what it is now these days, what is it, $20-something a month. And you want to put that in as a fixed expense line. You can do that. But there's a reason I don't have it broken out in mine. And I do have things like the Netflix or the Hulu or the HBO Max. I don't know what they call it now. And that's because you have a lot of control on a biweekly basis over whether you actually need that thing or not. They're very easy to cancel. So if you find that you're really in a pinch and you want to hit that 205 for your discretionary spending, you could cancel that. At least cancel it for the next month. You have a lot of control over that. That's the squishiness. And it's the same thing for things like food, so groceries, restaurants, maybe DoorDash. I've certainly done that a little too much in my life. Things like gas for your car. Even though you need that probably to get back and forth to work, to take the kids around, you can actually trim that down if you need to. Maybe you're not going to get a full tank this time. Maybe you're going to get a half a tank because you want to hit your plan and you want to hit that 205. Entertainment. It's probably the easiest one. Stuff you actually don't have to go do, but you're doing for fun. I group those together because I use what I call the sock drawer method. Some people use what they call the envelope method. You might have heard of it before. But the idea around this is that with every paycheck that you get, or every certain period you're looking at, you're going to take a specific amount of money for those discretionary expenses. You're going to put it in cash in an envelope in your sock drawer or wherever you keep your envelope, and that's all you have to spend for that pay period. Now I'm doing that electronically here. I'm saying, in this model for this hypothetical situation we've created, this person has $205 in the sock drawer to spend on those things, and they can't go above that. Now, I'll share with you something about earlier in my life. When I was trying to pay off some debt, I was so serious about this method, I actually did the cash in the envelopes in the sock drawer. I'd take a specific amount of cash that I could spend for the next 2 weeks when I got a paycheck. I would put it in that envelope, and I had a debit card that I would literally freeze in a block of ice in the freezer. That sounds crazy, but I was a little crazy about paying off my debt at the time. And so what I would do, put the card in a Ziploc bag, put it in a bowl of water, I would freeze it, meaning I could get to it if I absolutely needed to. But it was at least a couple hours to thaw that thing out. So if I wanted more money, and there were really only a couple ways to get it. One is I get it from my sock drawer, or two, I got to find money somehow. I tried to make it so there was no other option. And I did this while I had a pretty good income for people my age. I just wanted to be disciplined about things. I wanted to teach myself that because my spending habits weren't the best in the past. So this row 17 is like our virtual sock drawer. It's our virtual envelope method. I don't divide it out between the squishy things. To me, it's just not how I spend money. It's a little bit too specific. I just know for food, gas, and entertainment, that's the amount that I have for the next 2 weeks until we get another paycheck. Now, why do I do it biweekly? A lot of the apps that you can use do this monthly and have you set a monthly budget. And for me, it's just a little bit too long of a time period. I really like biweekly. I like how it lines up with your paychecks. 14 days is a pretty good window to be able to plan. You take it out to 30, 31 days, and it's a little harder to manage. So I like to do it this way. I think it's a really convenient way to say, until the next paycheck comes, this is how much I have to spend. I'll tell you a funny story. I had a friend who went to med school later in life. He already had a wife, kids, and had some income, had some money saved up. But he wanted to be so disciplined about his spending that even though there was plenty of money in his account for him to fill up his gas tank, he wouldn't do it. When it was time to fill up the gas in his car, he would fill it up with only the amount he thought was needed to last him through the rest of his kind of savings window. So he had a budget set for himself that he would not go over, and he wouldn't let himself fill up that tank all the way. I think it can help us in life to teach ourselves some discipline using methods like that. But you might think it's crazy. Either way, that goes right along with this methodology. You've got that specific amount to spend in your sock drawer or in the envelopes until the end of the pay period. One time when I was using this method, I was, I think, in my late 20s, and I really was almost out for the pay period. And my friends wanted to go to breakfast at this diner, super cheap place. But I was running so low that if I wanted to stay disciplined and I wanted to stick to my plan, then I couldn't do it. I couldn't go to the diner. It was only going to be like $10, $12 at the time. I don't know if that's humanly possible in 2025, but at the time, $10 or $12. And in some states, you can return cans for money. I didn't have any money, but I had a ton of cans that I'd saved up at home. And sure enough, I made myself get all those cans, take them into the grocery store, get the refund, and I used that for breakfast. That may sound crazy too, considering you and I both know my debit card was in a block of ice. I could have thought it out, but I didn't. It's just what I was doing at the time. and it worked. So to recap, in application, what you can do when you use this spreadsheet is use whatever method that you want to figure out how much that discretionary amount should be and try and hit that number on a biweekly basis. Now, I'll say this, there's all sorts of apps out there that can help you with this, and that's how I use those apps. Those apps typically connect right to your bank account. One of my favorites is Rocket Money. There are plenty that do it. They'll look at your credit card spending, the spending from your checking account, whatever accounts you hook up, and they'll tell you what happened. And you can set a budget in there and decide how much you want to spend on each thing. And what I do personally is I'll hook those up, and then I look back at my expenses, and I categorize them. And I look at what's going to end up falling into that food, gas, and entertainment line. And that's how I know if I'm tracking toward that reasonable number that I've set in the spreadsheet. So I just have a quick view in the spreadsheet of what that number should be, and I verify it using data from those apps. But I keep them separate, and I like them separate. Something I'll also do right here in the spreadsheet is that if you right-click on a cell, I'll do this in cell E17. I know that this is a hard-coded value in E17. I put in that $215 because that's exactly what I spent in that October 31st pay period. I mean, not me personally, but the hypothetical person in this spreadsheet. What I'll do is right-click on this, and I will click Insert Note. And I will actually write out some of the bigger expenses that happened during that time, in case I want to go back and review why that number was what it was. I don't put them all in. But if there was something extra that I spent, say I went to Applebee's and it was $80. Family dinner at Applebee's. I'll put that in there so that later on I can look back and say, why did I spend $215? Oh, we had $80 go out to Applebee's that pay period. Not a requirement to make this system work, but I like having those notes in there. Especially if I went really far over on discretionary and had a large purchase. One, so I can remember what it was, but also if that's going to happen again. Say there's something big that happens once a year, like I spent a lot on Christmas gifts. I may want to put that in the future into row 19 here, which is the irregular expected expenses. I may realize that's not a one-time thing. That's going to come up every year, so I want to plan for that going forward. And every 6 to 12 months or so, I'll take a look back at those big expenses in that line, and I'll add them if necessary if they're going to happen again. Add them right there to row 19. Now, one more thing about row 17. You don't just want to meet that number. You want to beat that number. The idea is if you've budgeted $205, like the hypothetical we have here, you want to come in at $190, $180. You want to come in below what you planned because that money is now usable for whatever you want. You can use it to pay off extra credit card debt. You could put it into savings. You could invest it. You could just let it drop to the checking account and have a little bit of extra padding. But that's the goal every pay period. Okay, like I said, I'm going to leave you a link to the playlist and to the very first episode so you can go back and build this spreadsheet from the very start if you haven't yet. I'll also leave you a link to download these spreadsheets, including this one exactly as it is, Applebee's note and everything, from thesheetkeeper.com. That way you can check your formulas against this and make it your own. If you have questions, please throw them in the comments. I'm sure that if you have a question, someone else does, and I can answer it and it'll benefit everybody. And if you have ideas for future episodes or topics you'd like to see, feel free to throw those in there too. I'd love to hear them and address those in future episodes. This is a newer channel, but I'll also be building a more formal course online. And if you'd like to check that out at some point, I'll put a link down there too so you can sign up for a wait list. For now, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.